So again, welcome to another webinar that we are hosting. It's going to be at least one more in this series that Eric is hosting. If you haven't met me before, I'm Johan and I'm responsible for NETGEAR Pro AV in the Nordics. I'm going to hand it over to you now, Eric.
Okay.
So give it a go.
Yeah, for the people not knowing me, I'm Eric Lindeman. I'm working for more than 10 years within NETGEAR. I started as a specialist for Wi-Fi and switching, and halfway around I get more and more involved into AV over IP, to AV trainings right now, and trainings and certifications and all that kind of things within NETGEAR. I do a lot of webinars, and yeah, that's enough about me. So let's go to the agenda for this webinar. What I'm going to do is to have a brief intro about NETGEAR AV profiles for the people who doesn't aware of our profiles. A little introduction of that. After this, I go into the topic of network maintenance. Yeah, what I think is that network maintenance by itself is, I think, an underestimated part of the AV world. And yeah, what I will do with my background of IT, I will going to train you on what is generally meant by ICT network maintenance, and I'm going to prove how NETGEAR Engage make it a little bit more and easy to fulfill the management and make it more efficient. And after this, I will give you a NETGEAR update demo of updating the Engage itself, and after that I do a demonstration on updating the switches. And of course, I'm going to give a lot of tips. So if you have questions, please answer or post them in the Q&A box, and I will help you to answer that at the end of the webinar. Okay, so far so good. So let's go to the NETGEAR AV profiles and how they achieved. There are more than 220 different manufacturers working together, closely together, I have to say, with NETGEAR for AV profiles. Most of the time, those partners received our switches, and they start programming and configuring the switches, and after that they presented the results to us, and then we look into the results, and if it fits in a normal template or an existing template, we add the manufacturer to the template, and if it's a quite new or a different different settings, we're going to generate another template for that. And also aware of their equipment, so we can do also a very good job of supporting you with those brands and our network switches. So after all, the result is a beautiful AV menu, and over time you see the options into the menu are growing and growing. So let's go on with the IV profiles and pronouncing that they are highly efficient. So it's reducing a lot of configuration mistake. Yeah, imagine when you are configuring 12 or 24 switches and you get a phone call now and then. Yeah, the chance you make a mistake or forgot something to set is reasonable. And after you start an AV installation, with only one small misconfiguration, your complete setup will be dropping, or the images will be dropping, or the audio will be dropping. So those AV templates save you a lot of time, of course, during the installation, also when troubleshooting, because we have some nice tools to do troubleshooting, could have seen in the previous webinar, but also for maintenance. If you need support from us or the manufacturers, it's very easy to report with Engage to our support department, and so we can help you most effectively. So why AV network management? As you can see, network management is a mandatory process to keep a network up and running and up to date the best way. So I'm going to put on my old IT glasses and I'm going to highlight on some specific agreements and specific how an IT department is handling their network maintenance. And also I'm going to explain you why network maintenance is very important. So the goal is to ensure the continuity of an organization. If an ICT network doesn't work properly, it can lead to delays in the workflows, loss of data, and even loss of productions. So regular maintenance helps to prevent problems, ensuring the continuity of your organization. To improve the security of the network, of course, is one of the other reasons, and ICT networks are increasingly being attacked by hackers. Regular maintenance helps to identify and patch vulnerabilities in a network, improving the security of the network. One other thing is to improve the network performance of your network. So an ICT network that is not properly maintained can slow down over time and can have stability problems. So regular maintenance helps to improve the performance of the network and ensure that the network is performing optimally. And the other thing is to reduce cost, because a well-maintained ICT network will lastly cause disruptions, and it reduces company operational costs. For example, processes are only interrupted when plant maintenance is carried out. So I think, as a summary, while you have to do maintenance on an ICT network and also with an IV over IP network, you can compare the scores of actions with the maintenance of a car. If you neglect your maintenance, you will come stand still on the road, will lose unnecessary time, and you will be presented with a hefty bill. So that's why maintenance is key in this kind of networks. But now you may be wondering, what exactly does maintenance entail? Roughly speaking, we can divide network maintenance into hardware maintenance. This includes the checking of the status of the equipment, replacing faulty parts and update firmware and drivers. You can also have software maintenance. This includes the status of the software, or checking the status of the software, installing updates, and performing backups. Not important. The newest Engage is also supporting very way of doing backup into networks. Not in the next webinar, but in the webinar that I'm working on right now, I'm going to handle a little bit of backup and maintenance, and I'm going to do a restore and a backup of the network during the webinar. And of course, another very high level topic is network security. You have to inspect, to identify and patch vulnerabilities. You're setting up firewalls and using antivirus software and all that kind of things. And of course, network performance. This includes optimizing the network configuration, troubleshooting issues, and monitoring network traffic. And also not the next webinar, but over the next webinar to come, I'm going to tell you a little bit about network monitoring. Okay. It's important to create a maintenance schedule that's tailored to the needs of an organization. A maintenance schedule is a document that defines the task and the frequencies for the maintenance of an ICT and/or AV over IP network. As mentioned before, a good maintenance schedule is important for the continuity, the security, and the performance and the cost for your ICT network. Here are some more tips on maintenance scheduling. So first, define the scope for the maintenance schedule. What equipment, software, and network components have to be maintained. Determine the frequency of the maintenance and how often those tasks have to be performed. Another thing is to identify the tasks that need to be performed. The tasks that are required to keep the network in a good condition. And not as important, delegate the tasks to the right people or teams. Who's responsible for carrying out the tasks? I think that's something to discuss with an IT department, because when you can fit your AV network maintenance together with the IT department, I think the result will be the best. And of course, document the results of your maintenance. If you have any findings or recommendations during the maintenance, please put it on a report and enter the report to the company itself. And of course, review the maintenance schedule regularly, because during the maintenance you are going to see there's new equipment, there are new hubs to go. So adapt your plans always to the introduction of new hardware and new software. Things to consider when you plan an AV network maintenance schedule. And even better, you as a VAR can offer this maintenance as a service. As an experienced pro VAR, your specialisms in the field of AV, most of the time an IT guy doesn't have this kind of experience, and that can be vice versa. Because an ICT guy have to maintain servers, firewalls, desktops, software, hardware, whatever, what's on the scope, you have to do this off. So that's an incredibly job to do. And this counts also for the Pro VVARs. Yeah, it costs a lot of time and a lot of specialism to do this thing. So yeah, my goal is to inform both you and both the IT VARs of working closely together and helping your customer the best way, because an IT key VAR can do what an AV VAR can, and vice versa. So everybody has his own expertise, and yeah, as NETGEAR we speak to both of those disciplines, so we can advise you both sides of this kind of things. So the result is 2 separate major maintenance agencies for the end customer, and I think yeah, the best way is to work closely together to get you service schedules tuned up the best way they can, so you're not breaking up their network and they are not breaking up your network. And of course, my goal is to inform you and IT guys about the things to consider when you do maintenance. We have to respect the SLA as expected by the end customers. So with due respect to both areas of expertise, our advice is to talk to each other as early as possible. Prefer doing the planning of an ICT or an IV deployment with good mutual cooperation and recognition of each other's expertise and challenges, combined with the right agreements and the fulfillment of disagreements, so you avoid surprises. So in short, collaboration works. And with this message, I let you closer look at the topics of firmware updates on the next slide. So firmware is software that controls the hardware of a device. Firmware updates are important and can improve the security and the performance of stability of your network and an AV equipment. So here are some relevant notes about firmware updates regarding networks and also AV equipment. First, firmware updates are often issued as a patch for vulnerabilities in the security of network equipment. These vulnerabilities can be exploited by hackers and to hack into your network equipment or infected with malware. Firmware updates can also be issued to improve the performance and stability of your network equipment. This can be done, by example, by adding new features or doing bug fixes. Also, firmware updates are often required to use new software or equipment. If you want to use new software or equipment, make sure that firmware of your network equipment is up to date. And it's important to regularly review the firmware updates for your network equipment, so you can include this procedure into the service maintenance schedule. Here are some tips to consider for installing firmware updates on AV network equipment. Regularly check firmware updates for your equipment. You can do this by visiting the device manufacturer website. And tip 1 for NETGEAR AV Line switches, you can use NETGEAR Engage, and this allows you to see at a glance whether there is new firmware for your switches. Make a backup of your equipment before installing a firmware update. This is a good way to protect your data in case something goes wrong during the update. And tip 2, NETGEAR Engage can download all your tech support files with one push of a button, giving you effortless access to your TXT versions of configuration versions of your switches. Always install firmware updates when the AV installation is not in use. This will help to minimize the impact of the update for the AV solution. And it's important to read the release notes of the firmware updates before you install it. The release notes will describe changes to the firmware so that you can access whether the update is necessary for you. By following these tips, you can ensure that your network equipment is up to date. Here are some specific conditions under which you should install a firmware update. So if there's a security vulnerability in your network that has been patched, it's key and has to be executed in the shortest amount of time. And there's another thing, if there's new features added to your device firmware, these features can be useful for your network, or if bug fixes has been fixed for your network devices, then I think you also have to install these kinds of firmware updates in the shortest term available. When are firmware updates necessary? If there are no security vulnerabilities in your network, your device doesn't have to be patched. If you don't need new features of the firmware, there's no immediately need to update your firmware. And if the bug fixes have not a significant impact on the performance of your stability of network, you don't have to install firmware updates. You can do it always plan and in a later way. So it's important to read the firmware updates before you install your new firmware. And of course, back up your system when you are going to execute firmware updates. If you have any questions about our updates and our patches of our switches, please send an email to proavdesign@netgear.com and we answer your questions and we help you out. Good. A long story, but I think some significant tips to get you up and running. Yeah, and now I'm going to show you how easy it is to update your Engage firmware or your Engage controller. But first I'm going to introduce a system at home. The heart of my system is an M4300 switch, and I have two V-line switches also connected. And of course I have connected this notebook to my spine switch to do the management. So this will give you a little bit of insight about the network and what I'm talking about. So let's first go to the update of Engage. So when I start Engage, yeah, here it is. When I start Engage and there's a new firmware update, you get a pop-up message that there is new firmware available. And I will show it in a minute. So let's start it up right now. Okay, I have to log in, of course. Give the password for Engage itself. And we log in. I get a notice, and the notice is telling me that there is a firmware update. So I'm going to click OK. So what I can do is go to controller management, go to available updates, and I can go to download and upgrade. So at the time I'm also able to go directly to the release notes. With click here, I get the internet side of Engage, and I can download and I can see all kind of releases and release notes. But I'm going back to Engage now. I click on cancel. I'm going to update again. Download and upgrade. I click on download. Then start to download the Engage version. Have to wait a couple of moments. Okay. And now I can close and install the new Engage version. So what's happening now is that this installation will be re-executed. And if you wait a little moment, I'm going to bring the screen. Yeah, okay. So I can do it in exactly the same directory where I already installed Engage. It's going to extract everything. It takes a little time, not that much. And please remember, Engage is not doing anything with your registry for Windows. And you can also install it on an Apple, of course. So with this copy action, maybe you see a lot of files going around. And after a while, it's that installation process is ended. And I can start up Engage again. Okay, yeah, here it is. Okay, it's starting again. And of course I have to enter my password again. And it started up. Okay. Here we go, loading my password. Log in. Okay, I see the overview. And I also see my switches have received also a new firmware version. And that the firmware upgrade I'm going to execute after on the next slides. So a little recap. The conditions to perform a firmware update is by one, always schedule your updates at a convenient time window outside of the office hours or the working hours of your AV installation. And the reason to do the update later on is that if you install new firmware into a switch, the switch always has to reboot. And with those reboots, your configuration will be out of order for a couple of minutes. One other suggestion is to always start with the spine switch for the update first, because the spine switch is the heart of your network. If you have updated the switch on the right way, it will come back. Then you can update the rest of the switches one by one without the influence of rebooting of a spine switch in the middle of an update of another switch behind the spine switch. So always do the spine switch first. The other thing is, if there's any vulnerability has to be patched, always do the firmware update as soon as possible. And only update your firmware when there is new functionality. Yeah, there is no urgent need to do the update when you don't need the new functionality. So you can do the update on a later time. And the other thing is with bug fixes, if there are bug fixes you're experiencing, of course, update your switches as soon as possible to resolve this kind of bugs. Next thing, I'm going to update the switches with this demo. So when I start to click on a blue firmware update with a little cloud symbol, I can click on it and I can do a new firmware online. So the firmware will be downloaded for me automatically. And the good thing is, if you have one category of switches covering all those firmware updates, the update is only downloaded once. If you have different types of switches, I have M45 for 10 ports version that has another firmware version than the 40 port version, and the M4300 also have another firmware. I have to download all the three firmwares again and again and again because they are different. Okay, it's almost downloaded, and of course there is a reboot involved after downloading this file. Okay, you see it. My Engage is going to look after the switch because the switch is going to reboot, and with a restart now the reboot of the switch is going to be executed. So for this I got a success, and you see the switch is immediately turned offline, and I have to wait a moment because this is my spine switch to beam online again to do the update for the rest of the switches. And because my spine switch is rebooted, I lost all the overview of the switches, of course. Okay, switches turned online again. Okay, that's good to go. I think the other two switches will show up on a short time. Let's wait a little bit for that. Okay, yeah, there's one. And as soon as those switches are turning up, you can also click on the blue firmware and the cloud symbol and do the updates and continue the updates. And that's what I already told you. This switch is using another firmware, another file to do the updates, so it has to be downloaded again. And within the latest version of Engage, you are able to do scheduled updates, but that will also be discussed in not the next webinar, but on the fourth webinar on Engage. So let's wait a little moment. Okay, it's downloaded, and of course there's a verify going on. If the download is okay. Yes, okay, I can restart the switch. And I can also click on the last switch of these two and do also the update for the switch. So that's exactly the same way I've done with the other switch. Yeah, and the good thing you see is that, that as long as your spine switch is updated first, or your central switch is updated first, you can update the switches one by one. And I think with the new Engage with the scheduler, I think it makes it even more easier to do all this kind of updates. Okay, I think it's clear now. I'm going to skip the rest of the demo and go to the next slide. So a little resume. For network maintenance, create a maintenance plan and integrate the maintenance plan for both AV and IT. Always plan your firmware updates. Don't execute a firmware update during business hours, otherwise your AV installation will stop for a short while. And of course, there are structural benefits within Engage to do firmware updates, so you have a better overview of the firmware statuses. Engage is helping you a lot with the updates and also simplifying your firmware updates. And of course, Engage make it very cost effective to do this kind of updates and the rest of the maintenance. What else do we offer? Okay, I take this one, Johan. So what else do we offer? Of course, we offer support and warranty. Our warranty is lifetime, of course, for the first owner of the switch. And it's including for an end user 90 days of technical support. For you as a reseller, it's lifetime support. Not only with chat, but also with the Pro AV team, which handle all your questions. For the rest, we have a Pro AV design team. If you've not already heard of them or work with them, they're doing dedicated pre-sale support, after-sale support. We help you with your network designs. We give second opinions on network designs.
Eric, don't forget, you say they. You are part of that team.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's true. I'm also part of the AV team, so I also do pre-sale support. I focus on pre-sale support, and I have some other guys focusing on after-sale support. There's also, yeah, it's a great team. They're very helpful and they're very reactive. So it's a joy to work with the team. So, and sometimes I join on after sales. It depends on how much time I have extra. And we also have a training site. So if you go to the NETGEAR Academy, you can subscribe and do a lot of trainings. And at the end of the training, you can ask a little questionnaire and earn a certificate of the trainings. And I can do also most of the time. It's for your region. It's remote. I can give you some trainings also for the starter training for Pro AV and the design and deployment training. So reach out to Johan or me if you want to have this kind of training, and we arrange 4 hours of my time to do the training remotely. The only thing you need is 1 or 2 switches, VLAN switches, for the hands-on of the training, and then you're good to go. And I'm going to introduce the next webinar. The next webinar is launched on January the 12th at 10:30, where we're going to introduce and tell you a little bit more of our new PR460X router and the most requested topic of configuring static routes. The PR460 is rather easy to install, and it's also very easy to configure the static routes into this router, and that I'm going to demonstrate it.
I think this is actually one of the most asked questions during our trainings.
Yeah, when I keep this webinar in the Netherlands and Belgium, I think I have about 80 people into the webinar. So this is a hot topic, as you know it. Yeah. And I already have a barcode. So if you like to subscribe to the webinar already, you can photograph the barcode, and you can subscribe to this webinar. It's a very enjoyable webinar, and yeah, I think it's very good to prepare yourself. And actually, I think it's also a great introduction of our new PR460 router, which is a 10 gigabit up and downstream LAN router, and also very easy to deploy and to update and to install. But that I'm going to demonstrate in that webinar. So far, so good. I leave this last slide for you, Johan.
Yeah. So the summary, I mean, our AV switches is one of a kind. We have the software that is, super easy to use. You don't have to be educated within the network part. It works splendid for normal AV installers or technicians. I mean, the hardware, the flexibility, you can just choose to have it mounted as a normal IT switch with the connections in the front, or you hide it and it looks really nice in your rack. And of course, we cover all the PoE needs and requirements. And for those cases where you don't need it, then the high amount of PoE, choose the other model with lower amount of PoE. So you don't have to buy one switch that has it all. You can select depending on the budget.
Yeah.
And of course, again, the support part. I mean, Team Pro AV Design, I would say that's the best teammate you can ever have. I can give you thousands of examples of real life cases, but I will not do that in this kind of forum. But much appreciated. I hear it almost every day that people, they thank them a lot. It saves their asses, so to say. Yeah. And of course, I mean, training that Eric can do either on-site or remote. That's very useful.
Okay.
Yep.
So that left us to the Q&A. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box and we were happy to answer them. So now there are no questions.
Nope.
Okay, no, still no questions. So, okay.
Then
we're going to close the webinar. And we like you to thank for your time and attendance. And yeah, if you have other colleagues willing to join this kind of webinars, please inform them. And if Johan and I throw a message or email you a message with the webinars, please share the news with your colleagues. Okay. And Johan, do you have a little word?
No. Thanks for attending, and thank you, Eric, for your time. Have a good week.
No problem. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Hey, see you. Bye-bye. Thanks.